Close your eyes for a moment and imagine life in a medieval town. The cobbled streets, the ringing church bells, the clatter of hooves on stone. But beyond the castles and knights, beyond the markets and cathedrals, there was another side. A world of filth, of fear, of unthinkable jobs that someone had to do. Today, we're diving deep into the absolute worst jobs in medieval history, the roles that were dirty, dangerous, dehumanizing, and in many cases, deadly. 1. The gong farmer, keeper of the filth. Let's start with one of the most infamous jobs. The gong farmer. The title sounds strange, almost poetic. But don't be fooled. This was about as unpleasant as it gets. The gong farmer worked at night, creeping into towns with long-handled shovels and buckets. Why night? Because no one wanted to see or smell them during the day. Their job? To empty cesspits, essentially medieval toilets. These weren't simple outhouses. They were deep, stone-lined pits filled with human excrement that had built up for months, even years. And they didn't just scoop it. Sometimes they had to climb in, waist deep.
No gloves.
No protection. Just a lantern, a bucket, and a strong stomach. The smell was so strong it clung to their skin for life. People crossed the street to avoid them. But ironically, they were paid fairly well, though most didn't live long enough to enjoy the money. 2. The fuller waiting in P for a living. Next up, the fuller. The medieval wool trade was booming. But to make woolen cloth strong and thick, it had to be fulled. That meant soaking it in stale urine. Why urine? Because it's full of ammonia, which helps cleanse and soften the fibers. The fuller would fill a huge tub with wool cloth and human pee, usually collected from public urine buckets. Then he'd climb in barefoot and stomp on the cloth for hours. The job was exhausting. And the smell? Imagine spending your days soaked in ammonia. Many fullers develop sores, infections, or respiratory problems from constant exposure. Still, someone had to make those warm medieval cloaks. 3. Leech collector, blood for the cure. If you were sick in the Middle Ages, your local healer might say you had too much blood. The solution? Leeches. That meant someone had to go out and catch them. Enter the leech collector, often a poor woman or outcast, wading into stagnant water with bare legs. She would stand still until leeches attached to her, then pluck them off into jars. Over and over, all day. Many bled for hours, got infections, or collapsed from blood loss. Swamps were full of biting insects, rats, and disease. The irony? Most leech treatments didn't work. So the collector bled, so others could bleed. 4. Plague burier, touching death. When the Black Death hit Europe, it killed nearly half the population in some regions. Cities ran out of gravediggers, so towns hired desperate men, often criminals, to become plague buriers. They hauled carts filled with corpses through the streets, chanting, "Bring out your dead." Some wore beaked masks filled with herbs, but most had no protection. They worked fast, digging mass graves, stacking bloated bodies, and shoveling quicklime over them. The pay was decent, the job fatal. Many were infected within days, but the dead kept coming. 5. Executioner, the man behind the blade. The executioner wasn't just a hangman. He was also a torturer, a head chopper, a burner of witches. He had one job: to end life, cleanly if possible, gruesomely if not. Beheadings required precision. One missed swing could turn a quick death into a gory, screaming horror. Hanging? Too short a rope and the prisoner slowly strangled. Too long, and the head might pop off. Executioners were feared and hated. Children ran from them. Priests avoided them. They lived on the edge of town and were often denied burial in churchyards. But they were necessary, and always busy. 6. Tanner, turning skins. Leather was essential for shoes, belts, saddles, armor. But first, someone had to tan the hides. Tanners took raw animal skins and soaked them in a revolting mix: urine, lime, and dog feces. The goal? To remove hair and soften the skin. The smell of a tannery could be detected from miles away. Tanners were permanently stained, their hands, clothes, and lungs soaked in chemicals. Their homes were far from the village center. Their life expectancy? Short. But without them, there were no boots for soldiers, no reins for horses, no armor for knights. 7. Rat-catcher, the rodent warrior. Medieval towns were overrun with rats. They ate grain, spoiled food, and worst of all, carried fleas that spread the plague. So the rat-catcher was summoned. Armed with traps, sticks, dogs, or even ferrets, they chased rats through tunnels and walls. It was filthy work, and dangerous. Rats bit. They were fast. They carried disease. And the places they lived. Sewers, granaries, crypts were full of mold and pestilence. If a rat-catcher got sick, no one cared. But if he failed, the whole town might pay the price. 8. Medieval miner buried alive. Mining wasn't a modern job. Even in the Middle Ages, miners dug deep into the earth for iron, tin, and silver. They crawled through dark, narrow shafts with only candles or oil lamps. The air was thick with dust. The walls unstable. Collapse was common. Poisonous gases even more so. Many died from falls, cave-ins, or just never came out. But the kings needed silver. The lords needed iron. And there was always another desperate man willing to dig. 9. Serf, born to suffer. Most medieval people weren't knights or merchants. They were serfs, tied to the land, bound to a lord. Serfs had no freedom, no rights. They worked from sunup to sundown, plowing, harvesting, hauling, and enduring. Famine? They starved. Va? They died first. Plague? No medicine. And even if they survived, they still had to pay taxes to the Lord, the church, and the crown. It wasn't just a bad job. It was a life sentence from birth to death. 10. Child mill worker, crushed dreams. In the later medieval period, as machines began to appear in textile workshops, children were often used as mill scavengers. Their job? Crawl under dangerous, moving machines to retrieve dropped cotton or clear blockages. Why children? Because they were small. Why did they do it? Because they were poor. If they hesitated, they lost fingers. Or worse, and if they cried, there were always more. History often celebrates kings and warriors, but the true fabric of the medieval world was held together by forgotten hands. Scraping, stomping, hauling, and bleeding. Their jobs were harsh. Their lives were short, but their work kept the world turning. So the next time you feel tired at your job, spare a thought for the gong farmer, the leech collector, the child under the loom. Because in the Middle Ages, you didn't choose your job chose you. Thank you for joining us on this quiet journey into the past, through the muddy streets, the dark tunnels, and the forgotten corners of medieval life. We hope this story helped you unwind, let go of your day, and maybe drift a little closer to sleep. If you enjoyed this calm historical tale, please consider leaving a like. It helps others find peaceful stories like this one. And if you'd like more relaxing journeys into history, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many more forgotten paths to explore together. Until next time, sleep well and dream of gentler times.